Hello, everyone. I have finally found the time to record my Sonnets 31 to 40 explication. So let's just get straight into it. As I've said in all of these previous explications, I'm not going to read each sonnet out as a whole block. I'm just going to go through line by line and explain very briefly what the intention was behind each one. So starting out in Sonnet 31. Blacksmith's hammer struck the glowing sword, the anvil rang its song into the night, of weapons fit to... well, let's just do the first line first. The blacksmith's hammer struck the glowing sword. He's forging the sword, so this is the sword with the tulip pommel that we saw in the very first sonnet, so we're finally coming back to that. The anvil rang its song into the night of weapons fit to slay the frightful hordes. So this is to say that this blacksmith is basically the best blacksmith there is. This is just a very poetic, I know poetic in a poem. I've made that joke before already, and I'm probably going to make it again. Anyway, it's just to say that this blacksmith is just about the best blacksmith there is. He makes the greatest swords anywhere. Commissioned for the prince who'd never fight. So this is sort of dramatic irony here. We know that the prince is never going to fight. The people in universe don't know that yet. So within the story, they're not certain of that at that point. The blacksmith forged a ballad of a blade. Again, really just driving home, he's an amazing blacksmith. He's really good at this. Perhaps if he had known its stainless fate, he'd not have shaped the finest ever made. So, would he have really put that much effort into this if he'd known that it was never actually going to get used? Or maybe that's what he set out to make, already sure his masterpiece was safe. Or is he thinking more like an artist? Is he thinking well, I have an opportunity to make an artwork that's going to survive forever because it's not going to smash against other swords or stab through human bodies on a battlefield. He ran his forge so hot the metal blued. So this is hot bluing or fire painting, which is again mentioned in the very first sonnet about how the gallery around the gem is blue. I think this was invented around the 1940s in the real world, somewhere around there. It's definitely the 20th century. So the fact that this blacksmith is able to do this in what is the equivalent of the early Renaissance is incredibly impressive. The fact that he's able to make steel turn blue, he's able to make a fire hot enough that he can blue steel, and sustained enough to blue steel as well. Probably some magic at work here. Magic isn't really explicit within this poem, but realistically, there's probably magic within this world, is the way I think about it. And chose the reddest gem to dress its face. There is a reason for red and yellow, very important symbols in this poem, particularly red tulips and yellow roses. We'll get back to that at some point. Not in this explication, though, in the next one. No point along the sword, was close to crude, a flower blade as ordered by the prince, no smith could forge its match before or since. Really, really hammering home throughout this entire sonnet that this sword's really good and the blacksmith is really, really good. This is kind of, it's more lyric poetry, this particular sonnet, than it is narrative poetry, because this is just me for 14 lines hammering home just how amazingly good this sword is. So on to Sonnet 32. The blacksmith raised the sword up to the king. The king allowed the smith to rise and spoke. I won't deny that sword's a marvelous thing. My son has ordered something quite bespoke. So the king's like, this is what you realize, you're the head of the military, right? And this is what you ordered? Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure about this? That's the subtext of what the king's saying. So he's saying it's bespoke. It's something that's commissioned specifically for a purpose, but at the same time, he's saying, this doesn't feel like the blade of a warrior. You're the second prince in our kingdom. The second prince is in charge of the military. What are you doing? You said my blade should be uniquely mine. This sword embodies my identity. I plan to forge a nation just as fine, a world from roots of love, not enmity. So this is the prince saying, hey, I don't want to be someone who kills people. I understand that's the role I was born into, but that's not what I want to do. And so I actually do have to go into what the red tulip and yellow rose mean, don't I? Red tulip and yellow rose mean, don't I? Otherwise, it's not going to be understood. So the red tulip represents emotions that compel you to action. So romantic love is an example. Anger is an example. So these are things that really push you towards taking action in any given situation. Whereas yellow roses in this poem represent emotions that are comfortable to allow to exist passively without taking any action on them. So platonic love is represented by a yellow rose, as well as things like fear, because fear often actually prevents action. It's kind of stops you from taking action because you're too afraid to do anything. So that's the kind of dichotomy there between red tulip and yellow rose. Red tulip emotions are those that compel you to action. Yellow rose emotions are those emotions that can just exist passively without needing for you to take any action on them of any kind. But of course, you can take action on emotions associated with the yellow rose, and you can choose to do nothing when faced with emotions associated with the red tulip. And so this is the second prince. He withdrew when he experienced this romantic love that he had for his childhood friend. He withdrew, he chose inaction, and he feels regret over that. And this sword is his way of saying, I will take action in the future, which we will find by the end of the poem that then gets inverted again in an interesting way. I hope it's an interesting way anyway. So what says the smith who turned this metal blue? What nature does a sword like this betray? The king's like, so, person who made this amazing sword, what does this say about the person who ordered it? Now the smith is like, my guy, I don't know. But of course he can't just say that because he's talking to a king. So instead, no sword like this existed hitherto. The songs will say, what man willed such a blade? Our history's page could laud or vilify. The king's eyes twinkled at the smith's reply. So I got those two the wrong way round. Yeah. I sometimes do that. I've done that a few times now where I've forgot a line that needed to be there in the poem. And I've written a line and then I'm like, no, I think the next line should actually go before it rather than after it. You know, it happens. But yeah, that's 32. 33. The miller's son surveyed another town. A mason's dome work caught his heedful eye. Domes! We have domes. We like domes. You must be someone of immense renown. I've never seen another dome so fine. So he's buttering him up. He's already buttering him up. He wants to know these techniques. And he has reasons, which you'll find out in the next sonnet. Would you be keen to share techniques with me? He haggled long to glean the mason's craft, collected tricks from far away, intrigued enough the mason sat to share a draught. That line needs to be said quite carefully, because there's an implied that here. So collected tricks from far away, intrigued enough that the mason sat to share a draught. So you have to say that line in such a way that it doesn't become, grammatically incoherent. So that definitely, it takes an understanding of the poem. I wrote it, so of course I understand it, but for someone else performing this, they will need to understand that there is an implied that between enough and the. But anyway, yeah, he's buttering up the mason. He's like, oh, I'm going to get him into a conversation and have a drink with him. Then over drinks he found the mason's price, and both departed glad for what they gained. So he got the techniques of the mason's domes off him, and he's like, yay, I have domes now. I can make, or I can tell other people how to make domes at least. The notes he took were always more precise than what an expert needed to be trained, but he was not adept at any trade, so noted every word to be relayed. And so that's what he's doing. He has settled into a role within his town, which we found out previously is not in the greatest state ever. Everything's kind of behind the times, so now he's traveling around and collecting all the trades from everywhere else. 34? Yes, 34. 34. A merchant caught the man along the road. I've never seen a job like yours, she said. You have no cart and knowledge is your load. So tell me, where does all that knowledge head? So this is a merchant who's just a traveling merchant who's like, you intrigue me, Mr. Miller's son. What are you doing? This isn't a job I've seen before. And it's really not a job she's seen before or anyone's seen before. Because basically, the Miller's son has invented information studies. He's essentially become a librarian. I mean, of course, that would have existed previously. The idea of being a librarian would have existed, but the way he's going about it really doesn't. He's this interesting kind of information merchant. I bring it home where growth depends on me. I forge a better future for my town. Using forge again intentionally to draw parallels between the second prince and the miller's son. They're both taking action to build a better future for the place where they are, to try to make things better. So that's an intentional reuse of the word forge to draw that parallel. No innovations come to us for free. Because as we know, the merchants don't like coming to that town because they get double taxed, so there's not much money to be made. This job of yours seems packaged with a frown. Why not just move where information flows? Why wouldn't you just leave? But we know the miller's son has just left before. He's done that before. And he and the miller and his mother were roaming around for 2 years. He doesn't want to do that again. The woman's words provoked ambition's grin. I'm sure your presence would not interpose, unless my company is wearing thin. So in this case, he's just like, well, I think I can convince you that there's absolutely worth in staying in my town, and it's a great place, so you should come and see. So that's his ambition here. He wants to convince her that there's absolutely a good reason for him to live where he does. A challenge I must certainly contend. Now climb on up. We've business to attend. This is the merchant being like, yeah, I have a cart and a horse. I am not going at your slow-ass pace, you person who is walking. So she's going, hey, get on up here so we can go there faster. And now, in Sonnet 35, we move on to Suhit, and what's going on with her. A lady does not set her legs astride, instructors stressed each time she rode a horse. All Suhit's wants were follies to deride. A princess does not deviate the course. So this is Suhit again having training as a royal. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like being penned in and being told, you must act this way specifically and always follow protocol, blah, 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 blah. She feels very stifled by that. A messenger rode by, a blur of speed. The messenger is irrelevant. The fact that he's going fast on a horse is the thing that matters. How I would love to ride at such a pace. A bifurcated skirt is what I'll need, also known as culottes, but bifurcated skirt was just better for the meter than culottes, and culottes is... I personally I feel that it's probably not a particularly well-known word, to be honest, culottes. Also, it has historically been used more for menswear than for women's wear. More so used for women's wear today, but not so much historically. So bifurcated skirt, I felt, was a better compromise than using the word culottes. So yeah, she's going, I can make I'll make the skirt myself so there's no trace. So she's like, I'm not gonna ask anyone else to do this. I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna get a skirt, probably just like cut a hole down the middle of it and then just sew the sides together so that it's basically just very, very baggy pants. Indeed, by her next class, she'd made her fit. Her teacher gasped when Suhit changed her stance. So stance, yes, technically refers to actually standing on the ground, but in this case, what I'm thinking is she puts on a different saddle. She puts on a saddle on the horse for riding astride rather than riding aside. And the instructor is like, how dare? And then, but is this not the safer way to sit? She raced away without a backward glance. So, yes, it is safer to sit astride a horse rather than aside a horse. And so that's just a reference to reality. I mean, I guess it's not really a reference. It just is a factual statement that, yes, it is safer to ride astride than aside. Anyway, she raced away without a backward glance. The stable saddle put her so at ease that she hadn't thought of who she might displease. And we're going to meet someone that you're absolutely going to hate in Sonnet 36. That being the Crown Prince. Crown Prince, what can I do for you today? Her eldest brother stepped into her room. She did not call him brother or repay aspersions that were She did not call him brother or repay aspersions that were certain to subsume each interaction with this distant man. She is scared of this man. She is absolutely terrified of her eldest brother. He's not a nice guy. Your role as princess is to be a bride, so he sees her as a tool for statecraft, not as an actual person. It's like, one day, we're going to sell you off for convenience. That is the only reason you exist. And yet you play as though you think you can. This is another line that you need to read in a very particular way. And yet you play. So play, just pausing there, and then as though you think you can. So it's as though you think you can play. She did not speak, completely petrified. So yeah, she's terrified of this guy. He's a lot bigger than her, a lot older than her, and has this very intimidating presence. Yes, intimidating presence. Roll wisdom saving throw to overcome the intimidating presence. DC of 14. So few people are going to get that reference. I'm leaving it in, though. He found the bifurcated skirt she'd sewn and ripped the cloth in twain, then turned and spat. So yeah, he found it, he ripped it up, and he's like, "Blah, you can't have things like this. You have no thoughts or feelings of your own." I accidentally didn't finish this quatrain, which is why this has an arrow going up. You'll make no more obscenities like that. That being the skirt, and he's saying that it is obscene. You are a tool of statecraft, not a girl. Again, him reiterating his perception of her as a tool, not a person. The moment he was gone, young Suhit hurled. And this is once again the reinforcement of the idea of this is a yellow rose emotion. So fear is a yellow rose emotion. It is something that compels you to be inactive, which is why she is completely petrified and inactive until he leaves. Until the Crown Prince leaves. Now, some people might be like, oh, so red tulip emotions are positive and yellow rose emotions are negative. No, there is no positive or negative dichotomy here. These are emotions that inspire action and emotions that either inspire inaction or are comfortable with inaction. So fear here is being presented as a yellow rose emotion. And so you would have to actively choose to take action against it. It's going to be relevant. The people cheered and whooped when they arrived. A portly priest stepped out to greet the cart. A miracle! The miller's boy survived. So we're back in the town with the miller's boy, with the miller's son, and the merchant who have just arrived back. I'll be some time. I hope you won't depart, the man said to the merchant by his side. So yeah, this is just after, this sonnet back here. We just had 2 sonnets of Suhit, and now we're back to the miller's son. A priest is useful to your work? She asked. The trades in town are quite diversified, so knowing every name is quite the task. The priests and I look over what I find. Each one's an expert in their god's domain, and to help me figure out who'd be inclined to to learn the newest skills we've ascertained. So the religion in this world is a polytheistic religion where the priests of each individual god are essentially scientists who are experts in that god's domains. It is part of their worship to research that domain. That's how the religion works in this world. It is seen as an act of worship to do science. So quite different to what we would be used to in real-world religions, especially modern real-world religions. I mean, there are ancient religions, of course, like where priests would be experts in particular things, like priests in ancient Egypt were experts in statecraft and often experts, and were some of the only literate people. So this is kind of what this is inspired by, and priests in ancient Sumer as well. So Sumer and Egypt both had that kind of paradigm where the priests were literate, and so they were sort of experts in a variety of things, and people would come to them for help in things beyond just religious matters. That's what's going on here. It's the same deal. That's a bit too much of a tangent, but it's fine. The merchant gazed upon the place she'd found and crouched and plucked a tulip from the ground. So, again, tulip and rose. Action and inaction. She feels an emotion, this kind of stirring of intrigue, stirring of affection that she feels she must take action on and choose to stay here, choose to relocate to this place. So that's what the tulip is representing here. I've lost count of what we are on. Oh boy. That's 41, 40, 39, 38. This is 38. I want to go and see the outside world, the princess told the second prince and queen. You cannot truly want me to be curled in bed all day and night and only seen in banquet halls, a prop for vanity. So at this point, the princess is starting to push back against the system, which is why her lines are not fitting in the iambic pentameter anymore. We're seeing the semicolons here that she's like, no, I'm breaking the iambic pentameter and having my lines sit in very strange, weird places that don't seem to make sense right now. Why don't you ask our brother or the king? Because that man has no humanity. Can't you see it's him who has me running? Only you can spare me from this terror. So suddenly we have 2 lines here that are not in iambic pentameter. For the first time in the entire poem, we've broken from iambic pentameter. she is so terrified. Suhit is so terrified of the idea of having to go and see the Crown Prince for anything that she breaks out of courtly protocol entirely and goes into trochaic pentameter instead of iambic pentameter. So an iamb is bum 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 bum. That's iambic pentameter. Trochaic pentameter. Trochaic pentameter is bum 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 bum. So the difference being the iamb has the stress on the second syllable, the trochee has the stress on the first syllable. So the iamb feels like an iambic pentameter feels like it's constantly building towards something, whereas the trochee or the trochaic pentameter feels like it's something that's constantly falling because it's going from a stress to an unstress. And so it gives you a very different vibe. At least that's what I'm trying to do with it. So she's so terrified that she goes into trochees that it's like she is spiraling here from fear. The queen shot up and pulled her daughter close. I swear he won't know what you've asked us for. What if we tell him that a need arose to gather up the citizens' appeals? So the queen is coming up with an excuse. This is consistent with her character from previously. She comes up with excuses to allow her children to do things, to be who they want to be. And then my youngest son will mind your guards and meals. I considered having your brother will prepare your guards and meals, but I was like, that could be interpreted as the crown prince rather than the second prince, so instead I've gone with my youngest son will mind your guards and meals. Yes, he's standing right there. But I felt this was the best way to communicate that to the audience as well as have it communicated in the poem to Suhit. Now, 39. The boarders need to have their voices heard, the princess argued when the carriage turned. How else will proper service be conferred? You want the people thinking they've been spurned? So this is the princess she is gathering up the citizens' appeals, as the queen's excuse was. And then the guard with her is like, Your Highness, that was only an excuse to let you see the world beyond the walls. Which, that's true. It is. It's only an excuse. I'm not protesting just to be obtuse. These letters will be read in father's halls. I swore I'd bring their words back to the king, and every other town deserves the same. So she's getting a bit more emotional here, which is why she's now stretching across her line across multiple lines, her sentence across multiple lines. So turn us round and let the people bring their grievances so we can light the flame of progress. Turn us round if you've the nerve to labour for the land you claim to serve. So, yes, it was just an excuse to go and collect the citizens' appeals. She's taking it really, really seriously. And fair enough. Like, this is a worthwhile thing to do. And finally, Sonnet 40. I mean, not finally, obviously, we've got a bunch more after that, but for this particular explication, finally, Sonnet 40. We've not seen little Suhit in so long. Just look how much she's grown since we've been gone. So they've reached the border town, they've reached the edge of the kingdom, and Suhit has encountered the miller and the miller's son again. I did not know your mother was this strong. The princess bore the hug that she'd been drawn into with agonized groans of faux despair. With anguished groans of faux despair. So she enjoys this, she appreciates this, but is pretending not to because she's like, an angsty 13-year-old. 12, 13, I don't know, somewhere around there. The miller's grandson stared from across the room. So the miller's son now has a son of his own. The one we mentioned all the way back in cycle 1. He's usually the one who gets ensnared. If you keep hoarding her, he'll start to fume. So basically, yeah, the miller likes doting on kids. She likes kids. She's very much a mother at heart. I mean, she is a mother, but she enjoys being a mother, is the idea here. But anyway, how did you find our home? It's like, how did you even get here? I've gathered letters from across the land, and there was something I just had to know. So many words were in a single hand. So yes, the miller's son is still going around writing people's complaints for them because they're not literate and can't do it themselves. He's still doing it. Even though he has his own town to care for, he's like, you know what? I'm still going to do this other thing as well. The merchant seemed amused by Suhit's claim. And now you know my husband is to blame. And now we have realized that the merchant from before is now the miller's son's wife. Although she just gets to be called the merchant. And you'll find later on the miller's son might get referred to as the merchant's husband, and that he kind of just, it wasn't really intentional, but it ended up just, he only really gets defined by his relationships to other people and never who he is in and of himself. I don't know if that says anything, but that's how he ended up just being referred to throughout the poem. It is what it is. But yeah. So those two from before were married, and yeah, that red tulip emotion that the merchant had led to this. She took action and very much succeeded in the action that she was taking. And yeah, that's it. That's Sonnet 40. And I only took 30 minutes to get through all that. Wow. I'm getting fast. No, I'm not getting faster. That was slower than the previous one. Anyway, that's all from me for this particular explication. So thank you for listening, and please subscribe if you want to hear more. All 2 people who are listening to this. Okay. Bye. See you in like 5 days with the next one.